The Grinch. If I could be honest, I don't really see the point of this movie. I mean, we already got an animated Grinch with the 1966 Chuck Jones special, and we already got a Grinch movie with the 2000 Ron Howard film starring Jim Carrey. So how can an animated movie of the Grinch add anything different than what we already have with the other two? It doesn't help either that this is also brought to us by Illumination Entertainment. Look, I like Illumination. It's a good studio that can make some enjoyable films. It's just that the last time they adapted a Dr. Seuss story, it ended up being their worst animated film to date. Then again, some could say that arguing about a new version of this holiday tale is a bit pointless. Like, if we're okay with having literally hundreds of Christmas Carol adaptations, then maybe another Grinch wouldn't hurt our holiday spirits. And who better to retell the tale than the Despicable Me guys, am I right? So now that he's at it again to steal Christmas, is it actually as clever as the marketing in places like New York City and Los Angeles? Or is this movie nothing but noise, 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 noise? Let's find out. The story. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Illumination learned a lot after making The Lorax, since it does feature some similar issues. Not all the same though, like there are a few things that have been improved, but for the most part, the story indicates that they're still having a little trouble with adapting books from Dr. Seuss. The most notable problem this movie has is, like many failed adaptations of children's books, too much filler. It really drags on with some elements in order to prove its point and to incorporate a lot of comedy, which is rather mediocre. Like, maybe there are a few chuckle-worthy moments, but the jokes mostly fall flat.
Oh, hey there. Sorry, little goat. I was looking for a rain...
Okay, is it just me, or is it becoming a requirement that today's animated films must have a screaming goat gag? I feel like they're more common than they should be. Anyways, on top of stretching scenes to get to that 90-minute mark like the times when the Grinch is setting up to steal Christmas, there is also an entire pointless subplot that would take a big chunk of the movie. Periodically, the film would stop so that it could take its time with Cindy Lou Who, where she has this big mission to trap Santa Claus in her house so that she can tell him face to face that she wants her mom to be happy. However, this is all meant to set up for the scene when Cindy Lou meets Santa Grinch in her house, thus making everything before feel unnecessary. Seriously, she can just suddenly wake up and go downstairs. We don't need a whole backstory for that. However, even though the execution of the story is highly questionable, it does manage to capture the heart of the Grinch. Oh, wait a minute, I don't mean it like that. I mean like the original story. I'll explain more later, but with this interpretation of the main character and the reason why he hates Christmas, it gives a new perspective on him that would be more emotional, resulting in many touching moments and might even get some audiences a bit teary-eyed. Now, not everything feels poorly done. When it would adapt the memorable scenes from the book, they would be great. So there are times in the story that are worth watching and worth telling in a new way. It's just that audiences would have to go through a lot of junk in order to get a bit of the good stuff. The animation. At least when one enters into a Dr. Seuss movie, whether it be good or bad, at least they'll know that they're about to embark on something that will be visually pleasing, colorful, and fun to watch. Okay, sometimes they're horrifying, but for the most part, Dr. Seuss movies look great, and this one is no different. What makes the animation of the Grinch stand out is in its detail and the way that you could see it everywhere in a large environment like Whoville. In fact, the backgrounds are what stand out the most in the movie. It really emphasizes how Whoville is a place that really celebrates the holidays with decorations mounted up on every corner both in and around the Who's homes. Even when you take a shot of the place in one whole frame, it looks like an entire town made of gingerbread, thus visually giving out that Christmas feeling. Also, like I mentioned before, this is a film that would have a vibrant color palette, and even the colors it would use really pop out, which works well here not only as a holiday movie, but also as a Dr. Seuss movie to give out that feeling that audiences are seeing a familiar place in a new way. But while the execution of the story wouldn't be much to be proud of, the character animation is an achievement the animators should be happy about. The characters' movements are the right blend of lively and energetic while also knowing when to be down to earth and subtle, thus resulting in some scenes that can either be fun or moving. This is why I would say one of the biggest highlights of the film is when the Grinch would steal Christmas because of how it's so well choreographed and include the most amount of creativity.
Yeah.
The Grinch went to work. He scooped up the toys.
If there would be one thing to criticize on the animation, it would have to be in the designs. Instead of looking like something that popped out of the book in 3 dimensions, the characters look like they have the generic Illumination style, like out of Despicable Me or something. Heck, even Max looks like he came straight out of The Secret Life of Pets. It's true that the textures help a lot to make them look impressive, but the designs are the one thing I wish the film would stick more to the book with. But even with that, the animation is still as strong as Whoville's love for Christmas. The characters. If you remember in the original book, there is a minimal amount of characters that are prominently featured. There is the Grinch, Max, Cindy Lou Who, and that's pretty much it. So with few characters, that would leave a lot of room for character development on them, right? Well, that depends on who you're talking about. Might as well start off with the star himself, the Grinch. For this adaptation, this would present a more emotionally scarred Grinch, one whose hatred for Christmas would come from his dark past of being alone in a day that's supposed to be about family and togetherness. This would be what would carry the emotion of the feature, one that would present the Grinch not as a bad guy, but rather as a troubled individual who would bottle up his true feelings and embrace his solitude rather than to seek out what he secretly longs for. Sure, it would leave out a few key questions, like how did he become alone in the first place, but I'll give it that it is a better backstory than the one from the 2000 film, and less creepy too.
Santa, bye-bye.
Along with him is his loyal dog Max, and is also visited by a fat reindeer named Fred. I say visited because he would appear in a lot less scenes than one might expect.
Fine. This one time.
There is also Cindy Lou Who is the kind-hearted little girl that wants her mom to be more happy than busy. I can see how the film wants to give her the same charm as the girls from Despicable Me, but because of how her scene of trapping Santa is pointless, the charm wears off quickly. It's not necessarily her own fault, it's just that the writing would use her as an indication that some meaningless filler is coming up. The film does try to include other characters as well, like Cindy Lou's mom, Donna, and the always merry Bricklebomb, but they end up being forgettable as they serve more to develop the main characters than to help add something to the story. Sure, they're not perfect characters, and they're definitely not the most memorable versions of these characters, but at least they are passable characters on their own. It's nowhere near the levels of the classic Chuck Jones cartoon, but it surprisingly didn't come out as a bad movie either. Illumination's The Grinch is a large case of a mixed bag where it would fall into somewhere down the middle, right where it would be decent at best and mediocre at worst. On one hand, it does deliver some weak writing with a story that mostly consists of filler, but manages to balance that out with some well-crafted animation and some touching moments. As for my recommendation, it honestly depends how open you are on the idea of a new screen adaptation of The Grinch. If you don't mind and you welcome new interpretations of the story, then you'll have a good time with this one. If you're against the idea, well then you already have the previous adaptation, so you won't miss much if you skip it. It may not even be Illumination's best work, but at least it did its job to show that Christmas means something a little bit more.
Oh, I get it. This is one of your kidding things. Finally, something you said is actually funny.